All right, let's start with prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this opportunity to be together. We pray that you're with us in this time of study, that you may open our minds, open our hearts, open our souls, that we may receive your word. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, so let's start off with our scripture for this weekend. We are in the Gospel of Matthew still. I'm going to pull it up.
Chapter 15.
Chapter 15, verses 21 through 28.
Jesus left that place and went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." And she said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly.
Okay, thank you. So at the time of Jesus, it was important for those who followed the Jewish faith to remain ritually pure. Consequently, the Pharisees and the scribes, they were very upset when a disciple of Jesus would not wash their hands before they would eat. But Jesus challenged the Pharisees concerning what made a person clean or unclean. Just before this passage, Jesus says, "It's not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but what comes out of the mouth that defiles." Time and time again, Jesus emphasized what was in the heart of a person. That core principle allowed Jesus to respond to people based on their faith and not based on exterior factors. So when you hear the phrase, "in the heart of a person," what does that mean to you? In the heart of a person.
What they're feeling.
How they react to things.
Okay.
Who they truly are. We can all pretend and put on a mask, but our heart reveals who we really are.
Mm-hmm.
Right, that's a good one.
You have a rough exterior and be the like a sailor, but in your deep down you can tell that this man or woman is genuine.
Can you think of any examples when Jesus responded to someone based on their heart rather than exterior factors?
I would say the woman that he told her her daughter's healed.
Well, also the rich young man who had done everything perfectly according to the law, but Jesus knew that in that man's heart he wasn't going to be able to give up all of his possessions.
Yeah, good. Can you think of any others?
I think when he cured lepers.
Right,
they have all blemishes all over the skin, and people shun them. And
About the time he talked with Nicodemus. Because Nicodemus's heart was in the right place, even though he was not one of them.
Yep.
Samaritan woman at the well.
Good. Any others?
Well, me.
Absolutely.
And all of us.
Uh-huh.
Right.
So following the discussion in the beginning of the chapter, Jesus encounters this Canaanite woman who is going to test his principles. She had many things against her back in those times. She was a Gentile, she was a woman, and thus by the rating scale, by that society back in that time, she had no status in two categories. But this woman, she still comes to Jesus on behalf of her daughter, shouting at him even, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." She didn't quite get it that she was supposed to remain silent. And Jesus didn't answer her at first. So how could Jesus ignore the woman?
Right.
Is this typical for Jesus?
Well, in fact, he points out that he's here to save the Israelites, not to anybody else. That one line in there, which I find interesting because obviously later on it's for everybody, not just for the Israelites. But that's how he answers at first. You know, I only came for the lost sheep of Israel.
Uh-huh.
Well, they also started out as a Jew, and in their customs, the women really are in second place there. They, they can't even dance with them just in case it's that time of the month.
Yep.
So, which is, I guess he finally saw the light too at some point.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get to that point in a second. That's good.
But I think Jesus was trying to show the people what they sounded like.
Okay.
What the Pharisees, this is what you would do. You would say, you're not a Jew and you're a woman and we don't need to speak to you. I think he was trying to make a point to the crowds that were following him.
Okay.
This is what you sound like.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility for sure, right? Because that would have been the common way to respond to this woman, is just to degrade her and dismiss her, right?
Yeah.
But I think he was also then challenging her to grow in her faith. You've been told, no, I'm not going to speak to you. But I think that was the challenge she needed to go further and deeper in her faith.
Okay.
Yeah, and he recognizes that when he says, after she follows him, says even the crumbs, and he says, woman, your faith has saved it and your daughter's fine.
Mm-hmm. So not knowing the end of the story, if we didn't know the end of the story, how would you have expected the woman to respond when she was ignored by Jesus?
Expect her to walk away or go away with her tail between her legs.
Okay.
Start crying.
Okay.
Be vigilant towards Jesus. Why don't you pay attention to me?
Okay.
I'm one of your flock.
Well, but he told her that she wasn't.
Right. He answered first. He was saying, I came to save the Jews, basically.
So let's put ourselves, I'm going to go off the Bible study for a second, but let's put ourselves in the woman's shoes for a second. And Linda and Vicky, I'll ask you two specifically. Sorry to single you out as our ladies, but if your child was sick or ailing or needed help, and you went to get help, and when the one person you knew who could help your kid ignored you, what would you do?
You'd fight even harder, you'd get more indignant, you would know that that's the only person that can help you, and you're going to do everything you can to make that person listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I would do anything for my child. I would beg, I would plead, say I would do anything. I'd clean their house, whatever, to help my child.
Sure. Yeah, and guys, I think we can agree on that, right? If our kids were in trouble, we would do whatever we could to help save our kids, right?
Absolutely.
Depends on which one.
Yeah, a whole other gear. It's one thing if you're in trouble yourself. When your kid is in danger, a whole other gear clicks in your mind, right?
Right.
It's that mama
Yes.
bear or papa bear mentality that there's nothing that's going to stop you from protecting that child. And it seems like that's what happens with this woman. Jesus brushes her off and she won't take it. So let's go. I'm going to jump back into the study itself. The disciples wanted Jesus to send her away so that she wouldn't bother him anymore. She was an outsider who didn't seem to know or accept her place. And this woman who was declared by society and Jewish law to not have a voice, well, she chose to use her voice to cry to Jesus repeatedly. So again, we touched on this already, but why didn't the woman get the hint and leave?
Well, just like the tattoo I have, for those I love, I will sacrifice. I will do everything in my power, whether it means me getting hurt or injured or even death. I would do everything I can to help my child.
Right. And what she was doing is she was going completely against the Jewish law.
Yep.
She wasn't going to be silenced by their rules and their regulations.
Yeah, so what's motivating this persistent behavior from her?
Saving her daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, right.
Yeah, like I said,
Inspiration.
as a parent, it's instinctual, right? There's a whole other level that clicks in when you're in that, dramatic moment. For those who've been around for my entire time here, back when Sandy hit us, I gave a sermon right afterwards. We had lost power and my family had gone into the basement, and I was carrying one of my kids to walk down the stairs in the basement. It was dark, and I slipped. I started to fall while I was holding my daughter in my arms. Well, I started to fall forward, but immediately my instincts took over and I threw myself backwards, wrecking myself. I bruised myself. I bounced down the stairs, but I was holding my kid up the entire time. That wasn't, a conscious decision I made. It just happened. Immediately I knew I couldn't fall forward or my kid would get hurt. I threw myself back to protect my child. I think this woman is in that same mode. It doesn't matter what laws she breaks. It doesn't matter what trouble she gets into, or what, social norms she's breaking. She doesn't care. She needs to protect her daughter. She needs to save her daughter and doesn't care what it takes to get to that. So Jesus responds with what at first can seem like a very out of character remark, right? Says, I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. The words of Jesus, they appear to explain his behavior toward the woman. But the words, they're not going to fly for this woman. So she engaged Jesus in a conversation and she begs Jesus for help. Jesus seems unmoved at first, right? Comments, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Again, it seems like he's, just dismissing her, degrading her, sending her away. So Vicky had given us, one possibility of what Jesus meant by this comment. What do you think?
I think he was testing her.
Okay. He was pushing her to see how far she would go.
How far? Oh, right.
Okay.
I mean, in thinking about it a little bit more, I mean, Jesus would have known her heart,
Okay.
and he would have known where she viewed herself in this thing. She would have viewed herself as a woman who had no right to speak. And she would have also viewed herself as a non-Jew, a Gentile, who had no right to speak to a rabbi. So he was almost playing into what she already perceived about herself.
Mm.
And he was saying that, you know, how dare you speak to me? You're a woman, you're a Gentile, you know, I'm not here for you. And that's what maybe her heart felt, but her instinct to save her daughter took her beyond that.
Mm.
I wonder if he was also setting an example for his followers to show them with her faith that they need to have the same kind of faith. I'm just wondering if that's part of it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, Jesus takes on the role of the bad guy for a couple minutes here, right? But in a way, as Vicky had said, he's saying things that those disciples have probably said in the past. Remember when the children tried to come to Jesus, they tried to get rid of them.
Yeah, and they even told him, here, get rid of her.
Yeah,
Send her-
get rid of her. Send her away. So maybe Jesus is showing them what they sound like when they're behaving that way.
Could be.
And he's giving a lesson for everybody that's around there in different ways.
I would say even the Pharisees, if they were in earshot, they would hear this.
Yep.
And say, you know, hey, yeah, because that's what they would do. Just send
Absolutely.
her away. They dismiss her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, imagine the Pharisees who are hearing this and they're saying, oh, finally he gets it. You know, he's finally sounding like us. And then he flips it, right?
Right.
It was interesting. I watched last night the first episode of this show, The Chosen. It's on YouTube, and it's the life of Jesus. And in the first episode, it's the curing of Mary Magdalene and her demons. And in the beginning, they show the Roman soldiers having Nicodemus go in and try to exorcise the demons. And the whole time he's saying to them, this isn't my job. I have, you know, and the Romans are telling him, no, you need to control the people. And he's saying, but she's not one of us. And why are you making me go in there? And he goes in there to save her from her demons. And of course it fails. So it kind of makes me feel like the same thing, you know, the religious leaders of the time, you know, that was their thinking. You know, we're only responsible for the Jews, you know, they're the ones that we have to keep in line so that the Romans don't get mad, and they're getting put in these positions of having to take care of the Gentiles who don't follow their rules, but the Romans are making them do that just to keep peace. So it kind of like, you know, Jesus is kind of saying, you know, I'm not really here for you, but in essence, he knows he is, but
yeah, this is a struggle for us because Jesus says these kinds of things a couple times. You know, he says, I'm here for the Jews right now, or this is for the house of Israel. And then he goes back and forth and has moments where he does break outside of his group. You know, I think there's a nuanced lesson there for us that on one hand, we're called to affect the people that are around us, right? Our group. We're called to be the voice of truth and good to those that God has put into our world. But there are also times where people from outside of our group need our help. And even though our primary function is within our group, Jesus is telling us that we would never ignore the needs of someone who desperately needs us. So it's kind of a both end thing. Now we know ultimately Jesus is here for the whole world, right? He says that repeatedly. But it's kind of a dance that we live in our lives of this, ministering to those that God has entrusted to our care, and ministering to all of those that happen upon our path as we walk through life. So even though the woman gets rejected at first, she continues, right, for the sake of her daughter. She's willing to take crumbs of Jesus, because even crumbs are going to be sufficient to help her daughter. Despite the odds against her, the woman's inner qualities of humility and faithfulness, they come through to Jesus. And he responds to her faith and heals her daughter instantly. So what can we take from that part of the story?
Have faith.
Okay.
Yeah, be persistent in your faith.
Okay.
Wheel gets the grease.
Against all odds, I guess.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, Owen said, and
Yes. Yeah.
persistent.
She was persistent,
I've
right?
said she was. She was. Now, I think personally that this can be a dangerous passage for us in our faith. Because what could be the dangerous implication that we take from this? And that some people would preach.
If I'm faithful, then Jesus will take care of everything and I don't need to do anything.
Yeah. Well, it's like that story about the religious guy when the flood comes and they try to save him, and then he goes up another flight of stairs, and they come with a rowboat and then a helicopter, and he gets mad at God. And God says, well, I did. I sent these people to pull you out. I sent the guys in the rowboat. I sent the helicopter. So yeah, like he said, it could be, well, I just have to sit back. Jesus, God will take care of me. I don't have to do anything.
Uh-huh. Yeah, you could take from it that it's only going to be the divine hand of God that's going to take care of everything, and you ignore other factors that could help you. Yeah, that's one dangerous way.
Well, you could also focus on that one thing that you want, and that's all you are praying for, and you're ignoring any other option that God might give you. It's, I only want this, I want this to happen. And you think, okay, if I just pray about it long enough and hard enough, God's going to eventually weaken and he's going to give it to me.
Yep. Yeah, there's a couple passages that talk about the persistence of prayer. And I think that the dangerous implication that some can take is, if I just pray hard enough, if I'm just faithful enough, God will do what I want.
Yeah.
And that's not the message at all. God's not our servant. And
Right.
It's not just if we nag him long enough. My kids, they may be able to nag me long enough to finally get what they want. The reality is sometimes I'll just get tired and I'll give up and I'll, let them have an extra hour of TV time or whatever, or another piece of candy. But it doesn't work that way with God. Just being persistent doesn't mean that God's going to give you whatever you want. And a lot of preachers have made a lot of money on these kinds of passages to say, if you want God to bless you, and what they mean by that is to give you what you want, then you have to be faithful. And in a lot of those preachers' minds, and in their preaching, being faithful is giving more money to the church. It's, coming to church more often. It's those kind of exterior things. Now, that's not new. That's exactly the kind of preaching that the Pharisees and the Sadducees were giving at that time. You know, if you just go through more rituals, and rituals back in those days came at a cost. You had to pay to be a part of those rituals. So all you need to do is make yourself more ritually pure and God will bless you more, is what they would teach back then.
And
So
your
this,
pal Joel Osteen does the same today.
yeah, he does. He does. That's why I don't like him.
He didn't say his name, though.
Yeah.
The Christian church did that also.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. As humans, we've tried to set up that transactional relationship with God from the very beginning, because that makes sense in our human construct, right?
Mhm.
You give something, you get something. That's how we operate as humans, right? There's no free lunch. You know, we're used to that in our human interaction. So we try and project that onto our relationship with God. As humans, and I'm off subject from the Bible study, but who cares? As humans, we distrust the grace of God. We can't imagine that God would give us these things for free and not expect anything in return. And so we imagine this construct that we have to pay for this ourselves in some way. We have to earn this in some way. And again, it's that cliche, you know, there's no free lunch.
But doesn't God only give us what we need, not what we want? Because what we want is not always what we need.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of times, because we don't really know what we need, sometimes the things that we want are actually bad for us.
Mhm.
And so when God does it, just like my kids, they want to eat candy all day long. They want to sit and watch TV or stare at their iPads or whatever all day long. That's an oversimplification, but you know, as a parent, I have to make sure that they eat their vegetables and they get physical exercise and that they clean their rooms. And you know, they'll tell me, Sam is famous for telling me over and over again, "You're not my daddy anymore," whenever I tell him something he doesn't want to hear.
Wow.
And I'm mad at you right now, tell me, and stomp off. Well, we do that with God all the time, right?
Yeah.
God doesn't give us what we want. And even if we think that what we want is altruistic, even if we think that what we want is pure, when we don't get it, we get angry about that. What's all this faithfulness for if I don't get the stuff that I want?
Mhm.
And that's what I think is the danger of this passage, because we're tempted to look at this, and because we want to put ourselves in control. That's what it's all about, right? When we look at this in a transactional way, then we just think, if I just give enough, then I'll get what I want. And in that scenario, I'm the one who's in control. And God is my servant. God is the one who's doing stuff based on me. But the reality is that a whole life of faith is all about recognizing that God is in control, not me. And
Yeah, go ahead.
And it's not necessarily that the woman is so persistent that she gets Jesus to do something for her. It's that the woman recognizes that Jesus is the only one who can heal her daughter. And she gives everything up and says, "You're it. You're all I got. I'll take whatever you can give me. Give me the crumbs from the table. I don't need the full meal. Give me whatever you can." And that's the faithfulness that she's showing. It's not her grabbing Jesus by the robe and saying, "You're going to do this." It's her raising up her arms and saying, "Have mercy on me."
Yeah, I mean, she's basically saying that Jesus is in control.
Yep.
You know, she's saying, I know you have the power to do this, and I'll take whatever you can give me. And she probably
Absolutely.
would have been happy if her daughter was partially healed.
Sure.
And instead, she got a full healing.
Yeah, no, she's taking whatever she can get.
And it wasn't that she wanted something for herself. It was for her daughter, not for her.
Yeah.
Speaking
Go ahead, Joe.
Speaking of passes, I was walking down Broadway in Brooklyn by a storefront church, and I heard the pastor say, in starting our ministry, we have to crawl. And the congregation said, "Crawl, pastor, crawl." And he says, once we crawl, we have to walk. And the congregation said, "Walk, pastor, walk." He said, after walking, we have to run. And the congregation said, "Run, pastor, run." He says, in order to run, we have to have you give generously. You have to give your life savings. And the congregation said, "Crawl, pastor, crawl."
There you go. So the woman who approached Jesus concerning her daughter probably knew she had no place or status to make a request of him. She came to him out of a mother's love for her child. As Owen was just saying, she didn't ask for wealth or fame or privilege, but for the health of her child. Her faith in Jesus was firm and steadfast. This woman knew that Jesus could perform miracles. She also knew she didn't need much from him, just a few crumbs. So we talked about this a bit, but a little bit more. What is this woman's faith like? What kind of faith does this woman have?
I guess it's pure faith.
She has tremendous faith.
Yeah.
She believed that Jesus had the power to heal her daughter.
You know, I mean, she had, you know, quite honestly, nothing to gain. She wasn't a Jew. You know, she didn't, you know, they were all about looking for their Messiah. That was not her, you know, she didn't go to synagogue and pray for a Messiah to come. She was just living her life. Yet here she was hearing the stories about Jesus, and she, you know, recognized that he was a Messiah, that he was something more than just the normal, every run-of-the-mill rabbi.
Right.
He also had nothing to lose. By not going to him, you know, she went hopefully thinking that he could do something. And if he couldn't, I mean, you know, what did she lose? She just had the same situation.
And you talk about faith, because she didn't say, well, if you do this, I'll do that. Or, you know, I've been following you and I would do anything you want me to do. And nothing like that. It was strictly that she knew, like Pastor said before, she knew this was the guy that could do it. And she had that kind of faith, and it was not a bargaining thing or negotiation or anything like that. It was actually begging.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, you know, Vicky touched on I think an interesting facet of this, right? The woman comes for help, and Jesus responds basically saying, "I'm the Messiah." Right? I'm here to bring about God's kingdom. Now, we think of that as he's come to bring something that's going to come in the future, right? But the woman basically responds with, "I don't give a crap about the future. I need you right now. My daughter needs you now." So it's this idea that salvation isn't necessarily only a future thing. It's something that we're asking for now in our current lives. So what do you think we can learn from this woman? How can we apply this to our lives?
Well, I mean, for me, it's, you know, the same idea that Jesus knew everything of who the woman was. He knew her standing in society. He knew who she felt she was. And, you know, I think, you know, I know in my heart who I think I am, and I know my sins, my downfalls, my failures, my whatever, and Jesus knows them all. And I think Jesus challenges me to rise above that and still bring everything to him, knowing that he is the only healer. You know, because I could stay stuck and say, well, I'm a sinner. You know, I've done this wrong. I've done that. And I wouldn't even go to Jesus. But Jesus is saying, I know your heart. You need to know your heart, but then you need to also bring it all to me because I am the only healer.
Not only that, you're right, but her faithfulness showed even beyond, because remember the people around him, they're saying, don't ignore her, get rid of her, send her away and all that. And she doesn't care. She's humbling herself because she does have the faith that he can do what she needs for her daughter. And I'm sure that she's in an embarrassing situation with people, all the people around, including Jesus' followers, saying, you know, get rid of her.
You know, when that happened, there were, I guess, a few million people in the world. Now there's like 7 billion. Does Jesus know the heart of everyone? The Jews, the Christians, the Muslims, the et cetera, et cetera.
I think so, yeah.
All right, that's interesting, though. You know,
Yeah, I've made it easy for God because he counts all the hairs on your head, so I gave him a break.
There you go.
I know your beard, though, Owen.
Your beard, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, if he's
Now he's got to count more. He's got
your
to count
chin
more
is
years.
hardly
Even more.
there, Owen, so he's going to be busy.
He'll be gone before the end of September.
I wouldn't shave it until the Mets win the series, Owen.
Oh my gosh, he's going to look like Methuselah.
Well, we're still ahead of the Phillies.
Well, that's not saying much. Not at all. It was a miracle that they won yesterday.
It was kind
Well,
of a
thanks, everybody. Good discussion today. We'll close with the Lord's Prayer in a minute. We're going to pick back up with this study in September. Haven't set a date yet, but in the weeks to come, I'll set that on the calendar, and then we'll have it in the weekly email with all the details, okay?
Great. Yeah.
All right, so why don't we close with the Lord's Prayer? Our Father,
Father,
art in heaven,
in heaven,
hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come,
come,
thy will be done,
Be done.
on earth as it is in
as
heaven.
in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our
Forgive us our
trespasses,
trespasses,
as we
as
forgive
we forgive
those
those
who
who
trespass
trespass
against us.
against us.
And
And
lead
lead
us
us
not
not
into temptation,
into
but deliver us
temptation,
from evil.
from evil.
For thine is the kingdom, and the
Power,
power, and the
and the
glory,
glory,
forever and
forever
ever.
and ever.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Go in peace and serve the Lord and wear your mask.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah, thanks be to God.
Kurt, it was good talking to you.
All right, everybody, have a great day.
You too.
Justin.
Okay.